Hello, welcome to today's bite-sized PD. My name is Scott Christensen, and I will be your guide as we navigate through various teachers' reflections on this year's National Council of Teachers of English Conference. First, we're going to hear from Danielle Clark, high school English teacher over at Corner Canyon. We're going to get to hear some of her takeaways from the experiences she had at NCTE.
Hi guys, this is Danielle Clark here from Corner Canyon. I'm here with the Queen and with Fabio, and I've been asked to quickly share some highlights from the 2022 NCTE Conference. The theme was Sueños, Pursuing the Light. It was all about including more diverse texts in our standard curriculum and fighting racism with the works that we choose to teach in the classroom. Okay, my favorite keynote speaker actually talked about information literacy, and I was so impressed with her. She was so intelligent, so informed, so articulate. I was blown away. So Seema Yasmin is a physician and medical researcher turned journalist and poet. So she's blending the arts and the sciences really well. Currently, she teaches science journalism and global health storytelling at Stanford University. She's written a couple of books, many books, more than these, but these are some of her recent ones. What the Fact and Viral BS. Those are about the spread of misinformation, especially when it comes to healthcare topics. And this one, If God is a Virus, is a book of poetry that leans on her medical background. So what did she talk about that I loved so much? Well, she talked about the need for us to teach our students information literacy skills. And I guess that spoke to me because this was the first time that I had created sort of a formal mini unit about information literacy. And I plopped it in right ahead of my research paper. And I know it was rough. It was the first time I'd done it formally. But the students were very receptive to it. They know it's a problem. If they didn't know it was a problem, they were surprised at some of the things we talked about. And so it was just, I guess, a timely topic. She specifically talked about how she's been working with the World Health Organization to try and understand why the misinformation spreads so quickly. And she said something that resonated with me. She talked about how these the misinformation is done through storytelling. It's anecdotal in nature, and so the World Health Organization and other credible organizations were trying to combat the misinformation with statistics and data. And she said that doesn't work because it doesn't have the same power that a story has. That the story has more power to impact the human psyche and affect the human emotion than just cold data points and hard facts. And so she's been working with them to kind of tell the correct information with a storytelling element. So I loved that because I believe in the power of stories. I think stories have a rhetorical place, impact on the audience. And then there is a huge need, I think, for this generation to learn those information literacy skills. So I loved what she had to say. It was just really timely for me. Okay, my favorite session was Kelly Gallagher and Penny Kittle. They don't really need an introduction. They were talking about their recent publication for essential studies, and they were focusing in on just one of those essential studies, which was digital composition. So they did some research and they were asking college freshmen to tell us where they felt underprepared in terms of writing when they get to college. So they said that there was a huge gap, that students felt very underprepared in digital composition because apparently they go to college and they're required to create digital compositions, and we don't do any of that in the high school. Now, I do have a question about who was surveyed, how many people were surveyed, where they were surveyed, how broad that survey was. But if that is the case, if that information is reliable, then then I was thinking to myself, well, I have some work to do. By digital composition, we're not talking about on Google Docs or even, using Canva to do something. They were talking about literally videos, creating videos. So video arguments, video poetry analyses, video summaries. And I thought that was kind of interesting because I mean, they make videos, but they don't do it as a genre of writing, as in, and I think I have some work to do if that's true. Okay, my second favorite session was the NCTE George Orwell Award session. I knew nothing about this session going in. I just kind of picked a room and popped in. And this spoke to me because this was about the George Orwell Award, which I didn't know existed until the conference. And they award this award to writers every year who are who have clarity and honesty in their writing. So this session was about teaching students to remove gobbledygook and lofty, effusive language in order to improve clarity and honesty in writing. So why did I like it? I felt validated because I'm always telling my students, get rid of the fluff, say this in half the words because your effusive language and your superfluous writing is muddying your point. I'm all about clarity all the time. I'm always harping on them to be clear. And so they gave me some tools that I could use with them. But it also led to a really interesting discussion, or actually debate, where some teachers were challenging that. They were saying, actually, there is a place for lofty effusive writing, for sentences that take 4 lines and have 3 positives in them. And that led to a broader discussion of the rhetorical situation. And, so anyway, it was just right down my alley. The suggested actions: pick up William Zinsser's On Writing Well. And this, by the way, is a really classic text on how to write well. So I just liked that one. Okay, NCTE, if you go there next year, here's my tip number 1. The session descriptions are often misleading. They have to make them to fit the theme. And so sometimes you think you're getting something and you get something else. So with that in mind, I would maybe next year plan which ones I want to go to, and then also plan to just pop in on one that maybe has a big audience or maybe a small audience, because the sessions, sometimes you went to a session thinking you were going to get one thing and you got something very different. So maybe just dropping in on something that maybe didn't look that great to you might actually be beneficial. Okay, tip number 2, bring a sandwich. They don't actually give you a lunch hour. So the first couple of days I was like, I didn't want to miss any of the sessions. And so I came underprepared. I needed more snacks. Bring a sandwich. Okay. Or plan to miss some of the sessions. And then tip number 3, Michelle Ritter taught me this: go for the swag. They hand out free books like crazy, and bring an empty bag with you to check on the way home so that you can take that swag home and build your bookshelf. It was a great experience. I loved being there. Thanks to Leslie and Scott and our faculty here who helped get us there. Really loved it. See you later.
Thank you, Danielle. Coming up next, we have Natalie Whiting at Corner Canyon, who had some similar experiences, but also has some new ones that she'd like to share with you.
Good morning. I'm recording this on our No Student Friday, so good luck, everybody. You'll be watching this later, of course. Hi, I'm Natalie Whiting. I'm at Corner Canyon High School, and I attended the NCTE in November in Anaheim. And it was my first one that I ever attended, and so I've just got a few notes. I'm kind of look over on the side here to read from my notes. And overall, I just loved the energy, the enthusiasm, the support that you could really feel there, being with colleagues from all over the country. That was really cool. We had some great keynote speakers. A couple of them canceled, which was a bummer. I was looking forward to Javier Zamora's keynote and Ibrahim Kendi, but they were not able to be there. I was also looking forward to Joy Harjo. She had a couple sessions, but she wasn't able to be there either. But Nick Stone was, and she was fabulous. had some great ideas about inclusion, mirrors and windows, representation. That was really a big theme, inclusivity. I attended a bunch of sessions about that. Another keynote speaker that I didn't know that was really, really great was Seema Yasmin. And I'll let her kind of lead into my next point, and that is that I got a lot of great book recommendations while I was there. And so let's see, Seema Yasmin has 2 books that I want to get. I still need to do that. One is called What the Fact? And it's kind of critical thinking, media literacy was my understanding, and kind of in a graphic novel format, so to speak. And then she also has a poetry book that I really would like to get called If God is a Virus. And another poetry book I had noted, Lost in Translation, several others. I could go on and on about some other book recommendations. One YA reading session that I attended had 3 authors who talked about their books and how the title of the session was Histories, Heartache, and Hope, What is Known, Unknown, and Why It Matters. And they have their books, nonfiction YA books, tell some stories about things that maybe are lesser known in a way that sounds like it really appeals to YA readers. So one is called Revolution in Our Time, about the Black Panthers. That's by Kekla Magoon. I hope I wrote that down correctly. And then Fallout, which is about the Cold War, a spy thriller by Steve Sheinkin. And then Murder Among Friends by Candace Fleming, true story about a kind of a murder mystery. And my guess is many of you are familiar with those. One also excellent session that I attended was about public language, bringing public language to light. It had some ideas about rhetorical grammar instruction, kind of a way to look at grammar through rhetoric. Again, a lot of good critical thinking and media literacy skills, and some great examples, great slides with some great examples. Everybody pretty much had slides with good ideas that you could, grab a QR code and use those, take those ideas with you. And so great experience, good ideas. And that's my take. Have a great day.
That's fantastic, Natalie. Next, we're going to have Leslie Morris, who is going to share some of her experiences and really big takeaways from her sessions and classes and learning at NCTE. Take it away, Leslie.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to share with you some of the things that I learned while I was at NCTE. It was amazing. So I'm just going to put a little plug in for, don't be afraid to ask your principals for funding to go. And they do offer scholarships as well. So we'll be sending out information about that for next year as soon as we get it. So I noticed that at NCTE, there were some general themes that kept coming up in multiple sessions. So I'm going to talk about those. And then there are a couple of really specific sessions that I want to share about. So the first thing that I kept hearing over and over again was that we need to break out of the 5-paragraph essay, that we need students doing real world writing, and that when we're looking at mentor texts, we cannot find mentor texts that are a 5-paragraph essay. There's no real model for that. Unless you teach AP and you have example essays, it's not really a type of writing that we're doing. And I find it interesting that currently in the state standards, it doesn't actually say like write an essay. It says write arguments, write informational pieces. So those can take multiple forms. And when teachers brought up the concern about, well, but our students have to take these end of year tests, a lot of the presenters responded with, then we should teach test writing as a genre. Teach it as a genre, just as you would narrative or resume writing, argument, teach it as a genre. And that there is a certain time or a certain place when that kind of writing belongs. And it's just as valid as poetry or memoir. So I thought that was really interesting. And then there were quite a few people talking about next generation genres. And so Scott and I are going to do sessions on those for DTL Summit, and we'll have them on our website in our learning library if you're not planning on attending DTL Summit. The second thing I kept hearing was more student voice in writing. And there was a real emphasis on narrative. And this idea that because we have emphasized informational and argumentative tests so that our students can pass high stakes tests, they cannot write narratives. But when we look at real world writing, real writers integrate narrative and research and information and argument together. And that's what kind of makes their writing really good. And if we're going to compare this to rhetoric, we teach that the best writing or the best arguments have ethos, logos, and pathos. And we're missing that pathos. We're missing that connection. So there's a lot of talk about narrative. And one particular instructor mentioned, he said, are we even preparing students for the college entrance essay or the portfolios or any of the type of responses that they're being asked to give? Can they write a narrative? Can they write about themselves? Can they do that in an essay? Are they ready for it? So that's something to think about, especially for our high school teachers who are working with seniors or juniors and having them write their college entrance essays. And that same person recommended a website. I'm not sure why the images are not coming up, but this website, it's tetw.org. Scott will put the link up for you. It has resources for essays. So nonfiction resources for teachers, 50 best articles and essays in 2022. And so you can click and find these essays. I love this because it has mentor text for AP English, essays for compare and contrast, right? Common App essay examples. And so it has a prompt and then different example essays. So I think this is a really great resource when we're trying to look for mentor texts with students writing. I'm not sure. The fourth session that I really wanted to highlight, this author or this writer, this presenter talked about using quad text sets to approach your units. And I loved this idea. So what a quad text set is that you choose a common topic or theme for your unit. And maybe my topic might be social inequalities in society. Then the next thing you do is you're going to determine your objectives. So you'll have very clear objectives, right? This is also going to help with rationales. And then you're going to choose a target text. This is the text that you are going to read in full as a whole class. So maybe my target text is The Great Gatsby. Then, so that's your first text in your quad text set. Your second text is video, audio, visual text, digital text that will activate students' prior knowledge before starting your target text. Then your third piece of text you're going to include is informational text to help build background knowledge of things that are happening in the novel or in the culture and society or the topic. And then the fourth text is going to be an accessible extension text to help students make connections. And what she actually recommended is to flip the text. If we are trying to get more diverse texts into our curriculum, then let's flip it and make that accessible extension text the target text. So for example, we just approved passing to be taught in the high school. Oh, I have mine right here. So Passing by Nella Larson. And this is really The Great Gatsby from a different perspective. and can be a substitute for teaching Great Gatsby, but let's teach a book by a woman of color. So this becomes the target text. And then my video audio, maybe my audio is poetry from the Harlem Renaissance and jazz music. Maybe informational might be, let's talk about some of the laws that were in place for interracial marriages, because this woman's in an interracial marriage, but she passes as white. And so her husband, believed that he was marrying a white woman. So let's do some informational text around Jim Crow era, but since this takes place in Harlem, what was life in Harlem like during the 1920s? Because it wasn't like they had full rights. And then the extension text becomes Great Gatsby. And let's look at the similar themes of social inequity. And you could analyze the party scenes compared to when they go into the city, right? Like so you'll pull sections out to compare. I really like that, because especially in the 11th and 12th grade standards, you're expected to compare a theme over multiple texts. And this is one way that you can hit multiple texts, multiple genres, and really kind of build this round unit. So I really, really like that. And the person who did this presentation has a handout on how to create quad text sets. So I'll give that to Scott so that he can send that out as well. And the last thing I want to share is, of course, poetry. You know, I love poetry. So I went to the High School Matters session, and the woman who started the hashtag Teach Living Poets presented, and she shared this site that she does with her students. So let me share my screen again. So this is what it looks like. And so Melissa Smith was the one who presented, but it's a PowerPoint that you could give students as choice. Now, of course, major caveat, go through, make sure you read and listen to all of these poets, okay? Because they're living poets. There's probably going to be some language. There might be some topics that are controversial. So please preview this. I can't edit it. So what they've done is they've collected information about authors. So they have the photo. You can click on their photo to go to the author's website. If there's a poetry book that they've published, it'll be in black. In green, it will be an audio of the poet reciting their work. And then this gray will be like a message from the poet. So this first one, let's do Elizabeth Acevedo. A lot of us will teach her novels. So she wrote the Poetex. So you could go to the Poetex. So this will go to her website. And so this is something that students could explore. This will go to the book where you could buy it. You could go to her Facebook or her Instagram or her Twitter. If you click here, it will go to all of her poetry on the Poetry Foundation and about her. Here's what she has to say about why we should teach living poets. So it's a video.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Acevedo. I am the author of the Poetex, and I want to encourage you to teach living poets. I think there are so many poets alive right now who are creating the most rigorous, challenging, thoughtful work that we've seen in a long time, who are really speaking to this current moment and creating the kind of work that I think young people and our students can connect to and can consider new perspectives because of, and can see the clear climate that created this work, because they're living in it as well. I know as a former English teacher how difficult it can be to bring a text into the class that I don't have an analysis for, that I'm unclear exactly on how to teach, that was not taught to me, right? And how scary it can be to bring that work in when you are figuring it out alongside your students, when you don't have an easy answer to what does it mean, but can instead ask the question, What is it doing? What is it considering? What is the emotional journey of this poem? Where is the volta? Where is the turn? That sometimes those questions are the ones that we need to be equipping our students with anyways, and not just trying to answer the age-old, question about meaning. And so I really want to encourage you all to be brave teachers, to be brave readers, and to instill, those skills in your students. Thank you.
Here is a collection that they have gathered. They are high school English teachers that they use with their own classes. And it's just an amazing resource. So check it out. You might find a new favorite poet. Bye.
Thank you, Leslie. Thanks for sharing your good thinking there. So we're running a little bit short on time, and I'd like to share two of the many takeaways. The first one is this book right here, which is Cultivating Genius by Gholdy Muhammad. And what it is really is it's kind of a framework for selecting novels that are historically and culturally relevant. I think she does a really good job of putting it together. I know that in the course, I basically took a novel I had taught called Well Rider that was turned into a movie later on, but then looked at it from these 4 different angles. We're going to do, I know Leslie and I are going to bring in a lady from, or we're hopefully going to bring in a lady from Utah State who is an expert on some of this work with Gholdy. And then we're going to try to maybe do some of this with our own stuff. But if you get a chance to even just review or look at something from Cultivating Genius or any of Gholdy Muhammad's other work, I think she has a new text coming out that Natalie brought up earlier, and I'll put a link to that on the resources page. But I would definitely get my hands on this. She articulates it perfectly. The other thing, and it was kind of it brought back up to me something that maybe, it seems so common that it had faded into the shadows a little bit, and that was my mentor texts. And I've used mentor texts, and I know that in an earlier piece this year, Heike Pedersen had talked about how she used John Krakauer's Death of an Innocent, part of that as a mentor text. But what I really loved here was the idea of a micro mentor text. So it was very specific into the technique that you're teaching. For example, and I linked this to, there's a site where this lady does, and it's awesome. She does 3 to 5 minute mini PDs using a mentor text that you could use with your students. And it might be on how to write a topic sentence, and then she goes and pulls a mentor text from a real world text of what a topic sentence might look like, say in a magazine or newspaper or whatever, and uses it with her kids, or online on YouTube in the video that I shared. I also bought a book of that, and I linked that in there as well. But I think it really revitalized that idea of using mentor text and made it very digestible, because you could just use it, do a 5-minute thing with your kids, maybe 10 minutes or expand it, or maybe it's a remediation with students who are really struggling with the concept. But I absolutely loved it. So my biggest 2 takeaways, I think, were using mentor texts in a digestible way that can expand and contract based on how much time you have and what the needs are of your students. And I think 2 was really looking at this framework work by Gholdy on basically novel selection. So anyway, thank you for your time today. And if you have any thoughts or would like to see a bite-sized PD from us in the future that we have not done, then please don't hesitate to reach out to Leslie or myself. Have a great day.